This is the Fifth Estate winning headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. But we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 8th of May, 2020, and I am 2J.
I'm Tom.
And I am GK, and in case you missed the headlines, here they are. In the Daily Nation, MPs united in anger. In the Standard, Raila's men's shock attack on Jubilee. And in the Star, unga, milk, bread, gas prices to increase. Shall we begin with the Standard?
Absolutely. Raila's men shock attack on Jubilee. Now, James Orengo this week, John Buddy and Junet Mohammed in the Senate, they went at government and they said government has misplaced its priorities with regard to COVID. But they also went at the police and said, oh, the police brutality in this country is shocking. Now, COVID landed here when? 2 months ago, my fellows?
Almost 50-something days ago.
Yes, it's only now that they're realizing. But look, this was not Junaid Orengo Ombadi speaking. This was Raila Odinga throwing a tantrum. And in my view, he's throwing a tantrum because he probably has discovered he is not the wild card in the handshake. And probably the wild card is Musalia Mudavadi. But why am I saying this? Look, Oscar Sudi and Raila Odinga coincidentally met for lunch. I don't believe it was coincidence. And if at all that is the case, maybe are they planning an alliance in the coming days? And if they are, what kind of of strength will that alliance hold? If you're going to put the numbers of the Kalenjin and the Lus put together, they don't even get to 5 million. And I actually don't also think that Uhuru Kenyatta, that Raila Odinga will agree to deputize William Ruto.
So basically, you are debunking the Standard headline that there was indeed no shock attack on Jubilee. Or do you think that it was a shock attack?
It was a shock attack because that's what I was saying. These people have realized for how long that there is that government has misplaced priorities. For how long have they realized? They have been in a trance for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
Now they are saying government. This is what Mbadi said. He said they need to wake up. They should know that the minority is still there. The handshake did not happen so that we can keep quiet. For goodness sake, you've been quiet for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
You're injected in a trance. You've been supporting government. So what has changed right now? What have you discovered?
Probably convenience, but yeah.
They should shut up.
Interesting times ahead. Well, we have a 3-part criteria that we use to break down the headlines. We ask ourselves, is it topical or speculative? Is it repetitive or groundbreaking? And is it thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Yeah.
So you're saying there was a shock, but they shouldn't be shocked because it has business has been like this for a while. So in the Daily Nation, if I got you correctly too, in the Daily Nation, MPs are united in anger. And the Daily Nation is saying this is a rare time when you're seeing all the MPs coming together to attack one man, the president. And basically they had 3 main issues: floods. Government response has been lackluster in the face of 194 people dying. COVID-19, they want to know where the funds are going and how they are accounted for. And city politics, senators are taking issue with the takeover of Nairobi, but also the recent evictions that we're seeing in Kariobangi. Now, the interesting thing here is, a house divided cannot stand. Matthew 12:25 says, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And every city or house divided against itself will not stand. Now, there's 2 options here. There'll always be division in politics. People will never see eye to eye on most issues, but we can agree on certain things. And I think maybe it's upon the president to use this team of rivals, adopt an Abraham Lincoln stance and see how can I use my enemies to progress and better the good of Kenya.
You know what? I think so much of this story is just complete rubbish because just as Turam was saying with the story before, a lot of these MPs have been sitting on the sidelines watching these things happen, and it's only when things start to fall apart that they're like, I now have something to say. If you look at I think it was the MP for Kariobangi. He was complaining about it was the MCA rather for Kariobangi, was complaining about the demolitions. As an MCA, is your role not to be on the ground to be with your people? Similarly, as an MP, is that not your role as well? So the MPs can't be claiming that they watched all of this happen and then now they want to complain and their object of aggression is the president. It makes no sense.
You see, I had this fellow, it's Junaid and Mbadi, and they're talking about the reclaiming of, is it Nairobi? And more comment as well. But look, who was actually in that meeting when Nairobi Metropolitan Services was actually being founded at State House? those fellows were there.
Yeah.
So what has changed in that short time that now you're attacking government and saying things are not going as well? For goodness sake, get out of your trance.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think that this week the final thought has been focusing on critical thinking.
Yes.
And
right
logic.
now, and logic. And I think this critical thinking right now, leave the MPs on the side. But I think the people of Kenya really need to look at their MPs and understand if are they applying critical thinking themselves? Do they have logic in the decisions that they are making?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm a proponent of devolution, so I don't want to see someone taking someone's city. I want us to do it the right way. And so Sonko, as much as we don't like him, has every right to take his city back and not reverse the gains of devolution. In other news, we have the Star.
the Star.
Where we're being told certain things are going up in price.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit two-minded about it, but I would want to applaud the Star on their recent coverage that does focus on a lot of numbers. So today they're telling us that the price of unga, milk, bread and gas is set to increase. But that is if a bill, that's a proposal, is set to pass. So they say that basic commodities may move from being under the zero-rated tax category to the tax-exempt category. And very simply what that means is that if you have a zero-rated item, most of the time a country will place that on a preferential good to ensure that low-income people don't struggle with the prices of changing goods.
Yeah.
But what happens here is the government does not tax the retail price of that item, but it allows for the credit of the VAT that went into the production costs.
Yeah.
So if you make bread, for example, there will be no VAT on that bread, but you can claim the taxes back on the VAT for what you spent making the bread.
Yeah.
But they want to now shift some of those goods into a tax-exempt category, which means that, again, the government still does not tax the sale of those goods, but you cannot claim a credit on the VAT thereafter.
Yeah.
So essentially what this does is that it may cause the increase of these goods.
Yeah.
So I think that right now in this moment, you don't want to be increasing the price of unga, bread, milk and gas.
Yeah,
I don't
as
think
our
that's
staples.
our
But this
staples,
is still
yeah.
a bill that is being proposed. That's the
yes.
bottom line, yeah?
And that's one thing the Star does very cheekily. They kind of like put the wording together to make it seem like it has already passed. So people can't really tell what's happening.
Yeah.
You see, 2J, this was, there was a VAT bill signed in 2013.
Yes.
And those goods that were zero rated then were put in the category of VAT. Now, the Star is trying to cheekily do this.
Yeah.
They're trying to manufacture public anger.
Yes.
This could be a reversal. And what is actually telling us that if you're probably going to remove goods from a VAT, as you rightly say, going to remove goods from a VAT category and take them to a zero rated regime, then you are actually letting forces do their job.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is very suspicious on the Star.
So who do we give our winning headline?
I'd give it to the Standard.
The Standard.
Greiler's men's shock attack on Jubilee.
Yes.
Even though it wasn't so shocking or shouldn't be shocking?
Are you trying to trick us? That's a good question.
I wanted to give it to the Star. They're sort of lifting the veil of ignorance.
All right,
But in a cheeky way.
In a cheeky way, actually, guys, let's give it to the Standard.
Can we give half a winning headline? I don't know. We need to find
or let's not give anyone a winning headline.
Agreed to
Yeah.
Okay, no winning headlines today, unfortunately.
We are mean today.
So onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country, where we also have a three-part criteria. We ask ourselves, is it humorous or dry? Is it satirical or pessimistic? And is it effective or just plain lazy?
Yes, and you have Ndula in the Nation, and you have the Major General Badi, who's the Director General of Nairobi Metropolitan Services, and he is in the midst of murkiness in Kariobangi, and he's saluting, and there's a fellow there giving him a medal in the form of that
a crane.
A crane,
Tractor crane, yeah.
Tractor crane. They call it Igeshiko in Kikuyu, and he's saluting. I don't know what Ndula is trying to tell us.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But so you see, it looks like a medal. He looks like he's being rewarded for
yeah.
So he's being
evictions.
sarcastic, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's one thing I want to put into context with this Kariobangi situation, I think a lot of the media outlets or social media conversations centered around the fact that people were given 24 hours to evict the area. Sorry, to leave the area.
Yeah.
But I think that 24 hours comes thereafter months of trying to get people out, and that of course doesn't excuse the fact that they were given 24 hours in this moment. But I think that's something that has to be put into context. I think one thing that stood out to me is that there was a lot of sewage spilling into the area, and that was exposing the public to a lot of health issues. And I think if you put that into the context of corona, it was a critical thing to do. However, the government was wrong to not then find an alternative. That I think is where they missed the mark.
Okay. I don't know.
Shall we look at another cartoon then?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we parked Dulas,
Yeah.
Gados.
Yeah. Gado, you have fellows, and he has drawn these guys who wear those, what are they called, the masks, and they have stuff disinfected.
PPE, yeah.
Yes, PPEs. And the thing there is news we would love to hear and see. And the caption there is the African Union has today sent hundreds of African doctors and experts to Sierra Leone and Liberia to combat COVID. You see, I think he's also being visionary here. You see the way the AU, and I've said it before, the AU is probably very moribund because there is no mechanism that has been set to actually help other African countries with regard to COVID. When you have war in Sierra Leone or Liberia, we send peacekeepers, right? Now, even this, Gado is trying to tell us this is a war situation for us, and we should be able to also step up and help other countries that are facing problems.
All right, Gado.
Yeah.
In the Star, what do we have?
You have a senator of, what is it called? Senator Ledama Olekina, and he has a hatchet stuck in his back, and right in the background is James Orengo.
What's on the hatch?
The hatchet is an
orange,
and
a juicy orange.
A juicy orange. And Orengo is saying, we have buried the hatchet, all right. And I think this is with regard to Olekina being elected as chair, what do you call it? County Public Accounts and Investment Committee. And Orengo caught a feeling, and he wrote to the Speaker of the Senate and said that Olekina should probably not have been chairman. Yeah,
they said Ongeri should have been.
Ongeri should have been chair. Sour grapes.
Guys, the cartoons today are so lackluster and uninspiring.
So lackluster, absolutely.
Do we give anybody a...
No, nobody wins anything.
I think we need some humor.
What's a Friday?
What a Friday.
What a Friday.
It's okay, I'm sure the final thought will turn it around.
No winning cartoon today. And what is our final thought?
And now our final thought. It is inspired by a book entitled, What If? Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions by Randall Monroe.
Sounds interesting. Before you do, may I give a summary of the week?
Oh, please.
So this week we're looking at critical thinking and logic, how to get your mind straight. And on Monday, we looked at the irrational ape, why flawed logic puts us all at risk, and how critical thinking can save the world by David Robert Grimes. And here we saw how trust in experts, science, and evidence-based studies has fallen and has been replaced by fake news, the rise of populism, and a lack of logical thinking. Grimes taught us that our ability to reason, reflect, and infer is one of our finest skills and is perhaps what best characterizes us as a species. On Tuesday, we looked again at one of our favorites, Factfulness by Hans Rosling and his family. And it explains how our worldview has been distorted with the rise of new media. And we looked through the 10 human instincts that can cause erroneous thinking and how we can learn to separate fact from fiction when forming our opinions.
Yes.
On Wednesday, we looked at Suspicious Minds, Why We Believe Conspiracy Theories by Rob Brotherton. And he showed us that we are all conspiracy theorists, just that some of us are better at hiding it than others. We saw how conspiracy theories have evolved over time and how they can have negative consequences. And it was fascinating to see how the human brain is drawn to sinister schemes. But remember, sometimes conspiracies are real and sometimes paranoia is prudent. On Thursday, we looked at how we got to now. And here we looked at 6 innovations that made the modern world by Stephen Johnson. And he tells the story of glass, sound, cold, clean, time, and light. And he explained how each of these innovations came to be and the things that we take for granted about them. Most importantly, we saw how one innovation can act as a springboard for another. And today we have quite a humorous and funny book.
Yes, a bit silly also.
Yes.
I'm going to say the title again because I think it's fantastic. What If? Serious Scientific Answers to Absurd Hypothetical Questions. So Randall Monroe is actually a former NASA roboticist. But I think after some years being in NASA, he retired and he went into comic books and answering scientific questions. And he's the creator of a very popular website called XKCD.
Yes.
So since 2012, readers have been submitting these what if questions to him. And they're usually based on a scientific or a science fiction premise. So every week, Monroe gathers the most interesting, weird, promising, and even disturbing questions. he posts his answers, and he accompanies them with a math-supported conclusion and some entertaining cartoons as well. So this book, What If, is a compilation of those Q&As, those questions and answers. So half of the answers in the book are new, and the other half are updated and extended versions of his most popular investigations. So in this book, he takes us on a journey from the absurd questions to the relatively solid answer that he's able to come up with. And I say relatively solid very cautiously.
Yes.
So the answers embody how to break down a problem, how to use assumptions and data, how to model out an answer, and how to contemplate the consequences that may come from that answer. So just a few examples of some of the questions that he goes through. What would happen if the Earth stopped spinning? What would happen if a bullet got struck by lightning? If your cells suddenly lost the power to divide, how long would you survive? And how fast can you hit a speed bump while driving and still live? 2M, I think you should look into that question. So the book also features this recurrent section called Weird and Worrying Questions from the What If Inbox, which are a short collection of questions that the author said he couldn't be bothered to think about because they were just so strange and worrying. So one from a woman was, how cold would your teeth have to get in order for a cup of hot coffee to make them shatter on contact? Is it possible to cry so much to dehydrate yourself? And his response to that question was, are you okay?
Indeed.
And then one personal favorite, if you saved a whole life's worth of kissing and used all of that suction power on one single kiss, how much suction force would that single kiss have? Yes, again, we go back to the title.
Oh no, GK is laughing.
Absurd hypothetical questions. So my favorite question that he asked was from a chapter called Machine Gun Jetpack. And the question was, is it possible to build a jetpack using downward firing machine guns? So the author says that he was surprised to find that the answer is actually yes. So just for context, a jetpack is the kind of thing that you would wear like a bag, and it's supposed to supposedly shoot you up into the air so that you can almost fly. So he says that the answer is yes. But to do it right, he says you have to speak to the foremost people on guns, and those people are 2M. The Russians.
The Russians.
Of course.
Yes.
So he says the principle here is pretty simple. If you fire a bullet forward, the recoil pushes back. So you push and then, thank you 2M. And if you fire downward, the recoil should similarly push you up. So he calculated this thing called the thrust to weight ratio of an AK-47 in order to find out if this machine could be used for a jetpack.
Right.
And the answer was that you would need 300 AK-47s to make a jetpack to lift a human.
Wow.
But one of the first things he said at the beginning of the book is do not try these things
at home.
Yes.
Makes sense.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
So he does, he asked another question, or somebody asked another question. What would happen if you call a random phone number and say, God bless you? What are the chances that that person who answers has just sneezed? So most of us, when you sneeze, we say, bless you.
True.
Yeah, so he's saying, if you call a random number, what are the chances that that person has just sneezed? And the answer is, it's hard to find good numbers on this, but it's roughly about 1 in 40,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
Whoa.
And so he says, but before you pick up the phone, you should keep in mind that there's roughly 1 in 1,000 million chance that the person you're calling has just murdered someone.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah, so you might want to be more careful with your blessings. However, given that sneezes are far more common than murders, you're still much more likely to get someone who sneezed than to catch a killer. So this strategy is not recommended. However, so what he does is he compares, he realizes that there's more numbers for murder rates, but there's less numbers for the sneeze rate, right? So he says, okay, so he goes and Googles and tries to find out what the widely cited figure would be.
Yeah.
And so there's one doctor who had said that it's probably 200 sneezes per person per year. Somewhere else that he read in a study done, where they try to find the estimate or the average of the sneezing rate for a person in a year.
Yeah.
And that number came to about 400 sneezes per person per year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Assuming that that person sneezed only when they were awake.
Whoa.
Right? Anyway, then he turns to Google. It's really absurd. Then he turns to Google and he says there are about 5,980 articles from 2012 that mention sneezing. If half of those people, these articles are from the US, and each one has an average of about 4 authors, then if you dial the number there's a 1 in 10 million chance that you will get someone who just that day had published an article on sneezing.
Oh
Yes.
my goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, there are about 60 people are killed by lightning in the US.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
That means there's a 1 in 10 trillion chance that you'd call someone
Yeah.
in the 30 seconds after they've been struck and killed by lightning.
Oh gosh.
It
Whoa.
gets even more absurd.
Yeah.
Lastly, let's suppose that on the day that book was written, this book that we're reading was written, 5 people who read it decided to actually call and try this experiment.
Yeah.
He says that if they call numbers all day, there's about 1 in 30,000 chance that at some point during the day, one of them will get a busy signal because the person they've called is also calling a random stranger to say God bless you.
Oh my
So they're also doing the same
test, yes.
experiment. And then it gets even more absurd.
Yeah.
There's about a 1 in 10 trillion chance that 2 of them will simultaneously call each other.
Yeah.
And at this point, probability will give up
Yeah.
and they'll be both struck by lightning.
Oh my gosh.
So this is our recommendation for today.
No, I can't believe this guy, but I kind of like him because he looks at the good flip side of the alternative.
Yeah.
So for mine, he asks what would happen to the Earth if the sun suddenly switched off. So if God switched off the sun, what would happen to us?
Yeah.
Now the flip side are 4. I have 4 things to say.
Yeah.
First, we will have improved satellite service.
Really?
When communication satellite passes the sun like this, there's a bit of distortion. That's because of the sun's rays. Now, when you switch off the sun, we'll all communicate without any
You
problems.
sound like a real scientist too.
Yeah. Now, second is better astronomy. When the sun is out, we can see the stars much better. We can see the moon much better. Our views of outer space will be fantastic. But third, we'll also have reduced infrastructural costs. There will be no need to build any bridges since there will be no water that will be running underneath the bridges. So now we'll take our cars we'll drive on the frozen ice to the other side.
Won't we be really cold?
Yes, we will be. Now I'm gonna come there. But fourth, we'll also have cheaper trade. You see, time zones normally make trade very expensive. But when we switch off the sun, we'll all be this thing called UTC, Universal Time Coordination. We call Japan and say, what time is it? Still 1 a.m. It's 1 a.m. even here. It's very dark. Now, all the above requires the function of the human being. Right? Now, if the sun supports matter that keeps human beings alive, at what these things he's talking about will not be even there for us to speak about.
And enjoy.
And why is that?
Now, let me give you the reasons. One, within a year, temperatures could drop to minus 73 degrees Celsius. By that time, the top layers of all the oceans will have frozen up.
Yeah.
But second, the sun also creates the conditions for all life to exist. And there's something called photosynthesis. Tujay, did you go to science class?
Yes, I
Biology.
did. Biology, exactly.
Yes. Now, without the sun's rays, all photosynthesis on Earth would stop. All plants would die, and all the animals that require food from plants would also die, and human beings will feed on none either.
And there'll be no oxygen for us to breathe.
And there'll be no oxygen.
Interesting.
All right. Now, and I want to say lastly, the most important resource is what? Human resource. If human resource is not there, the world as it is and as we know it will fall. So therefore, but you know what? I like the flip on it. The flip, he's gone to the complete opposite and is giving us
It's
the lighter side.
Yeah, it's an interesting light book. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very
Absolutely.
interesting. There's one other question he asked for all those Facebook users out there.
Yeah.
When, if ever, will Facebook contain more profiles of dead than living?
Ooh.
And he said that it will probably be at some point in 2100.
Wow.
Yeah. So we can't keep an eye.
Okay.
80 years from that.
Oh my goodness.
But who knows?
Anyway, on a day where we had no winning headline and no winning cartoon, I want to leave you with this. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Just be one." So be good. Stay safe this weekend. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, but also look for us on TV. We're on GoTV, Pan Free to Air, and StarTimes. Have a lovely weekend.